Good morning, this is Pauline.
And this is Ken with the Society News for Friday the 19th of May. Tuesday, the Dolphins will be swimming this coming Tuesday evening, the 23rd of May, at the Waterside Pool in Ryde. The swimming group has sole use of the pool during the session, and there are lifeguards in attendance. If you are interested in joining the group, please contact the Society to advise us of your swimming ability and for us to advise the Waterside Pool. Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held as usual to support the Society this Wednesday, 24th of May. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea as well as a piece of cake. The Owls will be meeting Wednesday the 24th of May at 2 p.m. in Millbrook House. Ricky J. will be singing a selection of songs for the group. The group lasts approximately 45 minutes, which is then followed by tea or coffee and cake. On Thursday the 25th of May, the Knitters and Natterers will be meeting at Millbrook House. The group meets at 10:30 a.m. until 2 p.m. As well as the knitting, there is plenty of nattering, as well as volunteers that come in and read to the group during the afternoon. Friday, the Striders will be out for their monthly stride on Friday the 26th of May. The stride will be going to River Yar, Stage 3. The minibus will leave Millbrook House at 9:50 a.m. For those meeting at the start point, you will need to meet at bottom of New Church Chute at approximately 10:30. Lunch will be at the Bugle, Brading, at 1:15. Any other news? Well, fellowship meeting details are as follows. The group meet at Bethany Evangelical Church, Union Street, Newport, on Saturday 27th of May, at 3 p.m. The speaker this month, Mr. Alistair Wells. There are various activities like hymns, quiz, story reading, short Christian message, followed by tea. Please note, a collection will be taken from which donations are made to the Torch Trust for the Blind. Hymn books and scripture in large print and braille are available. Further details from Mrs. Jackie Moore, telephone 520797.
And now we have the scaffolding news. A list known of footway obstructions for work including scaffolding or hoarding. We're unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also include our tables and chairs permits that have been issued in the past week. So we start with the Bay area. This is Sandown area. Fat Harry's Chip Shop, 53 High Street, Sandown. Lloyds Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin. 11 High Street, Brading, due up on the 22nd of May. Now there's a new cherry picker. This is at Chubby's, High Street, Shanklin. This is due to go up on the 23rd of May. And the My PA office, High Street, Shanklin, due up on the 23rd of May. These will be the same cherry picker, which will work at the two properties opposite each other separately. A banksman will be on site. In the Cowes area, development site, Castle Street, East Cowes. 2 Sun Hill, Cowes. July Cottage, Bath Hill, Cowes. The Aspect, High Street, Cowes. 43 High Street, Cowes. 30 Beckford Road, Cowes. Scaffold on Consort Road. 44 High Street, Cowes. Current hoardings, 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes, and 93 High Street, Cowes. Now there are new scaffolds at Jersey Cottage, Market Hill, Sun Hill, Cowes. This is due to go up on the 25th of May, and 10 Bath Road, Cowes, due to go up on the 5th of June. In the Newport area, in Nippert Court in West Street, Newport, around the Newport Minster in St Thomas's Square, Newport, the Guildhall, High Street, Newport, TSB Bank, that's in 119 High Street, Newport, Animal, 34 High Street, Newport, Red Squirrel Property Shop, 11 St Thomas's Square, Newport, Home Bargains, Gunville Road, Taylor Road in Carisbrooke, and 8 Mill Street, Newport, due up on the 30th of May. In the Ryde area, Spence Willard Estate Agents, Grove House, Sherborne Street, Bembridge, Michelangelo's, 30 St Thomas's Street, Ryde, Solent Court, Castle Street, Ryde, 25 George Street, Ryde, French Franks, James House, St Thomas's Square, Ryde, rear of Ivy Hall in Sloop Lane in Wootton, Ryde Street Gallery, 129A High Street, Ryde, Hobbs the Jeweller at 165 High Street, Ryde, Hill Cottage, Kings Road, Bembridge, and 13 George Street, Ryde. In the West Wight area, Cornerways, the Broadway, Totland, 2 Trinity Road, Ventnor, former Mill Bay Hotel, Esplanade, Ventnor, the Met Bar, Esplanade Road, Ventnor, 24 Spring Hill, Ventnor. This one has been amended with apologies from Island Roads. 4 Market Square, Ventnor.
This week's In Touch. In Touch, in this week's episode, Peter White talks to the author of The Braille Legacy, a musical currently staged at the Charing Cross Theatre in London, which dramatises the life and achievements of Louis Braille, who invented the tactile writing system. Ellie Southwood, who has been to see the show, gives a review from a blind person's perspective. Last week in Spain, the first international blind tennis tournament was held, with 12 countries competing for international rankings. Chris Bailey came home with a trophy for Great Britain and the title of world number 1 in blind tennis. He tells us what it means to him and his hopes that one day blind tennis will be a Paralympic sport.
And now we're reading from the Isle of Wight County Press for 19th of May 2017. We start with the headlines, and the first one is the floating bridge fiasco. The second is opening date set for store. So, floating bridge fiasco. Tearful children were carried across the Medina after the new £3.2 million floating bridge broke down within 24 hours of going into service. The craft had to be taken out of service and no date has been given for when it will be back in business. An electrical fault halted the Welsh-built craft on Sunday, leaving foot passengers no choice but to wade back to shore. Drivers were stuck on board for up to 2 hours and, when they disembarked, there were difficulties getting off, with drivers complaining of scraping their cars on the ramps. Children needing the toilet were carried to East Cowes by staff and returned to their families in cars on board. On Monday, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency suspended the service for further training. A surveyor said, "We will be re-inspecting the vessel in due course, subject to the issues being rectified. We are confident the company is working hard to bring the vessel into full service shortly." Islander Amy Vesey was travelling with 2 of her children, Cruz 7 and Blaze 5, to watch her eldest son Owen 10 play his final football match of the season in Northwood. Amy said the boys were tearful and started to panic after an hour, saying things like, "We're never going to get off." "We missed Owen's game and I had to call someone to collect him as I was stuck. As I drove off, the bottom of my car scraped the ramp. I've made a complaint to the council as it felt like no one knew what they were doing. We weren't offered a refund and we were stuck for 2 hours with no toilets or refreshments." East Cowes councillors Julia Baker-Smith and Carl Love have called for a full investigation. Councillor Baker-Smith said, "You expect 1 or 2 teething troubles, but this seems to be more than teething trouble, and the council must get to the bottom of what is happening and demand it is rectified at no cost to island taxpayers. I will also be calling for a dispensation on business rates to compensate those impacted by this prolonged disruption to their footfall." An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson thanked passengers for their patience and said the council was working with the Coast Guard. The new vessel underwent testing, including trips across the River Medina, embarkation and disembarkation with vehicles. It had always been anticipated that, as with any new vehicle, there would be a period of time for staff and users to become used to its operation.
Opening date set for store. The opening date for the new Asda store has been revealed. The store on the outskirts of Newport will open on August the 21st. To mark the event, the supermarket has launched a competition for children to design a bag for life that will be sold in the new supermarket. An Asda spokesman said the successful designer will be made a guest of honour on the store's opening day, will collect the first printed version of their design and will be thanked with a £50 gift card. Entries should be no bigger than A4 and only one entry is allowed per child. The design must be in felt tip pen or paint. The winner must be available on the opening day and entries must be submitted by June the 5th. Each entry must have the name of the child and their parent or guardian's contact details on the other side. If entering via a school, the school's contact details must be used instead. Entries should be sent to Corey Kitchener, Asda Press Office, Havas, that's F-H-A-V-A-S, PR52, Princess Street, Manchester, M16JX. Alternatively, entries can be scanned and sent to corey.kitchener@havas.com.
Trust must be removed from Ireland. The Academy's Enterprise Trust, AET, is financially incompetent and educationally illiterate, according to the Isle of Wight Council's education spokesman, who this week led calls to have them removed from managing island schools. During a passionate debate at an extraordinary meeting of the full council on Wednesday, Councillor Chris Whitehouse said the trust had no place on our island. Councillors unanimously passed a motion approved, tabled by Councillor Julia Baker-Smith, to approach the government so AET could be removed from managing any school on the Isle of Wight. Councillor Whitehouse told members, "I have no time for AET. The way they have handled the situation at Sandown Bay is disgraceful." There were cheers from parents in the public gallery as furious councillors unanimously condemned AET's recent behaviour at Sandown Bay. Councillor Whitehouse said during a meeting between AET bosses and the Isle of Wight Council last week, AET admitted they wanted to shut down the Sandown site. Earlier in the debate, Councillor John Howe highlighted AET's treatment of parents and governors when Western Academy in Tottenham was shut. He said AET should be ashamed of the way they treated the school. As well as demanding AET is removed from managing island schools, councillors want steps to establish a new local body to take on the management and running of Sandown Bay Academy. AET has confirmed it would pull out of running troubled Sandown Bay Academy as a last resort. However, a spokesman said the Trust's first interest remained in the amalgamation of Ryde Academy with the Sandown School.
Ex-teacher got £170,000. Some £170,000 that could have been spent on education was instead paid to a Ryde Academy staff member who no longer worked there. Following claims of financial mismanagement at Sandown Bay Academy, it has emerged that AET, the trust that runs both schools, continued to pay former deputy head teacher Ginny Parry for more than 2 years after she left in February 2015. Her post was subsequently advertised with a salary of up to £69,000 plus benefits. AET spokesman Mike Barnett denied the money had come out of the school's budget, however, and said it was paid by the academy chain. He would not comment on why Mrs. Parry had left Ryde, as it was subject to an ongoing legal case. Further allegations AET had wasted money have been made in relation to Eric Jackson, at one point the principal of both Ryde and Sandown Bay Academies. He was not paid as a staff member, but as a consultant, earning £1,000 a day, according to a source. The County Press was told that pro rata salary of £195,000. No sensible school would pay that. Yet AET forced Sandown to pay it. Mr. Barnett, however, said the cost was reasonable for such a highly accomplished principal who delivered real change at Sandown and took it out on special measures. Mr. Jackson was only paid one salary when he was principal at two schools, and he did not claim travel and lodges expenses he was entitled to. He denied Mr. Jackson had refused to rock the boat by making redundancies when Ryde head Rory Fox was criticised for doing so, revealing significant redundancies proposed by Mr. Jackson were not implemented by AET for fear it would destabilise the school. Claims Ryde and Sandown were forced to fund consultants' fees and expenses on top of the 5% management fee it was obliged to pay AET were defended by Mr. Barnett, who said local authorities would have particularly taken a larger percentage. But the County Press source said the fee must be around £500,000 a year for both schools. That's education money AET has taken off the island. They say the fee is for paying people to come and improve the school, but they still build the schools on top of that for consultants. AET want the fee for their £250,000 chief executive and posh new headquarters in Euston.
And finally, on the subject of Sandown Bay, campaigners say the school is viable. Claims Sandown Bay Academy is not viable have been dismissed by campaigners. The war of words between AET and parents intensified this week, with parents strongly refuting AET's assertion Sandown's financial reserves were exhausted. The claims were also dismissed by Isle of Wight Council Education spokesman, Councillor Chris Whitehouse, who branded them as tosh and twaddle. Last week, the Trust said over the past 5 years, the school had halved in size and income, leading to overspending and deficits that were not sustainable. The Trust added income, which is tied to pupil numbers, had plummeted from £12 million in 2012-13 to £7 million this year, leading to reserves of just £100,000. However, campaigners say they have obtained figures that show many schools run by AET were in a worse financial position than Sandown Bay, and the troubled school had never been in deficit. In its statement of accounts seen by the County Press, the school appears to have a surplus of £604,000 in 2015, and the end-of-year statement in 2016 shows it's had £375,000. Campaigner Vicky Brooks said, "You can see from the figures Sandown funds varied over the years. They're scaremongering and trying to say things that are not true." Last week, a petition signed by hundreds of parents was handed to the boss of the AET, Julian Drinkle. Councillor Whitehouse said AET have based their calculations on the past reductions in pupil numbers, but we know from the data of the children in our primary schools there are more than enough children in the area to sustain a good school on that site.
Lack of risk assessment stops undercliff work before it begins. Work to remove a temporary access road built by residents at landslip hit Undercliff Drive will not begin until a risk assessment has been carried out. Removal of the road was due to begin on Monday, but has been put on hold due to the fears it contains dangerous asbestos. Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart, told the County Press most of the road may not even have to be removed if plans to reinstate the link between the severed halves of the Undercliff Drive eventually went ahead. He said no further work will take place until we are satisfied a risk assessment has been carried out. It may be we don't have to remove all of the road. The work is on hold for the immediate future. In February, Councillor Stewart said Undercliff Drive needed to reopen and commissioned a feasibility study to look into the options. The St Lawrence Road has been closed to traffic since the landslip in February 2014. In that year, the Isle of Wight Council commissioned a report estimated it would cost up to £20 million to rebuild Undercliff Drive, a section of which has been single carriageway since 2001 landslip. Councillor Stewart drafted in island-based landslip expert Dr. Bruce Dennis to work with the council officers to produce a study on the economic effect of the landslip and what could be done to stabilise the road if it was to be reinstated. In February, Councillor Stewart said it could not be beyond engineering capacity to fund a way to remedy a landslip of less than 100 metres.
Bembridge still war over offices plan. Pleas for the new Bembridge Parish Council to work together for the good of the village fell on deaf ears at its first meeting, which was blighted by bitter infighting and intimidation claims. A packed and fractious meeting on Tuesday followed the election of 11 new open Bembridge councillors who criticised former members for pushing ahead with unpopular plans to redevelop the former parish building in the High Street. It sparked several rows with the two remaining members of the old guard, Councillors Sheila Weedle and Richard Weaver, who said they'd already been excluded from email exchanges. Councillor Weaver criticised Councillors Mike Curtis and Alasdair Steen for taking files from the council office, branding them naive at the very least, and saying Councillor Curtis had a pecuniary interest in the building as his fish shop was based there. However, they denied intimidating clerk Emma Goldring, likened to Cardinal Richelieu standing behind the throne of the previous council by one resident, claiming they had only taken minutes of committee meetings to bring themselves up to speed on the situation. It now looks likely the redevelopment plans will be dropped, since the Open Bembridge group campaigned against them, and as Councillor Steen informed the meeting, the Isle of Wight Council's planning department had recommended their refusal. Council spending proved another sticking point. Members argued over a £480 payment to the Society of Council Clerks and whether to pay £700 to print and deliver an annual newsletter. Raising auditors' concerns spending was unsustainable. Councillor Steen said the newsletter was out of date and did not offer good value, prompting Councillor Weedle to respond, "It could be tweaked. The main reason the new council don't want it to go out is because it shows what a good job the previous council have been doing." New Chair Councillor Marion Sullivan said, "There's supposed to be trust, transparency and working together, and we're sitting here doing absolutely the opposite. This is not what we're here for. We're here to help the village." One resident said, "This is my first meeting. There's been such a furor, I thought I'd come along. I don't think this is a very good start." Due to the number of deferred decisions where members felt further work was needed, an extraordinary meeting was called for Tuesday, the same evening as the annual parish meeting.
Opposition dub Tory move, dark day for democracy. Independent councillors have accused the new Isle of Wight Council Conservative administration of silencing opposition after scrapping members' question time at County Hall. The move to end the opportunity for councillors to question executive members at full council meetings was approved by the Conservative majority on Wednesday. They also attended the appointment of opposition councillors to committee chairs. Leader Councillor Dave Stewart said opposition groups have been allocated the majority of seats on the scrutiny committee. The fact is we have a mandate. We have a duty to the electorate to go where we are asked to go, he said. But Labour councillor Jeff Brodie branded the Tory regime an elected dictatorship. Councillor Julia Baker-Smith, leader of the 9-member Ireland Independent Group, described it as a dark day for democracy. This erosion of the democratic process is worse even than the pure days. The Conservatives were effectively silencing the opposition by removing the opportunity to ask questions of the leader and his cabinet.
A reward is being offered in an attack investigation. Crime Stoppers has offered a reward of up to £1,000 as police step up the hunt for a man wanted in connection with an alleged serious assault in Ryde last year. A CCTV image taken of 51-year-old Henry Thomas Henderson of Downsview Sandown has also been released. At some point between 11:30pm and midnight on Tuesday, November the 22nd, 2016, a 51-year-old man was assaulted in Newport Street. He was treated for injuries to his face and leg. Henry Thomas Henderson is being looked for by police for questioning in relation to the assault. Police believe he may have left the area and he may have travelled to Wilmslow, Cheshire in February this year. He may have left the UK and officers are applying for a European arrest warrant as part of their efforts to locate him. He's described as white, 5'11" tall with short, straight dark brown hair. He has a slim build and a Scottish accent. Detective Chief Inspector Nick Heelan said, Mr Henderson has been featured on the Crime Stoppers website to assist our inquiries. The charity offers a reward of up to £1,000 for information leading to his arrest in relation to its most wanted appeals. Incidents like this are very rare on the Isle of Wight, and this is clearly a high priority for the investigations team on the island. I need the public's help to locate Mr Henderson, so if you know anything that may assist us in our search, please make confidence by calling 101.
Anger after purses stolen by lowlife. The owner of a pet shop has described the person who stole 2 purses while customers were being served as lowlife. The theft happened at Pets with Heart in Holyrood Street, Newport, on Sunday between 10 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. when it was discovered. The purses, which were in a handbag hanging in the shop's back office, contained cash, credit and membership cards and animal licences. The theft was discovered as co-owner Sharon Groves attempted to pay some bills. It was really a bad end to our 70-hour-plus week in our lovely little shop, she said on social media. A lowlife had been in and taken both my purses from my handbag, which was hung up out of sight. She said, I hope you had a good night out on my hard-earned money, which was for our lovely rare breed pigs we care for in our spare time. Both purses have sentimental value. I would be very grateful for the return of the purses, but realise you'll have already used the money. One of the purses was later retrieved from the Cancer Research Shop in Newport, which contained cards but no cash. The other purse, light blue in colour, is still missing. It contains cash and an important pig transportation licence.
A trainee bricklayer waded in with his fist to allegedly stop naked pictures of a teenage girl being posted on social media. 18-year-old Kenny Leggett of Rue Lane, Ventnor, admitted assaulting a teenager when he appeared before Island magistrates on Tuesday. Leggett approached the teenager on December the 29th when his victim was sitting on a swing at Pan Country Park, Newport. He headbutted him, punched him in the stomach and head, leaving him cuts and a bloody nose, said Anne Smout, prosecuting. He only appeared in court because he declined the option offered to him by police of paying his victim £15 compensation. Representing Leggett, Oscar Vincent said he had the welfare of the girl at heart. He had previously tried to reason with the teenager over posting the pictures and snapped on the night. Leggett was ordered to do 60 hours of community service work and pay his victim £50 compensation.
Charity shop. Theft hits most deprived. Thieves who broke into a charity shop and stole more than £250 have deprived some of the neediest people in the planet, his manager said. Burglars broke into an Oxfam shop in St James Street, Newport, between last Thursday evening and early hours of last Friday. They had broken in by wrenching open Oxfam's key safe and using the shop's spare keys to enter the premises and safe, which contained more than £250 in cash. The suspects ransacked the premises, which took staff a day to clear up, losing them a day's work takings, as well as the expense of having to change the locks. Manager Caroline Wood said it was a shock to discover what happened. Thankfully, nothing else was taken from the shop. The people who did this are low-life scum, the lowest of the low. To put it in perspective, £250 could provide safe water for 250 people, safe shelter for 12 refugee families, or 76 families in crisis without food. The thieves who do this sort of thing are depriving the most needy people on the planet. We want to warn other charity shops that what happened to us could happen to them. There are people out there targeting charity shops. Mrs. Wood said the area would be covered by CCTV, and she has written to the Newport Parish Council appealing to it to consider funding it.
One of the island's most popular beaches has received a whopping £6.6 million to improve water quality. Southern Water has awarded the cash to Shanklin Beach, one of 7 to receive a share of £31.5 million, as part of the company's efforts to protect and enhance the region's beautiful beaches. The other 6 are in Kent and Sussex. The cash could be spent on restricting dogs further on the beach and working with homeowners to fix broken pipes which cause wastewater contamination. Announcing the news on Monday, the start of the bathing water season, Southern Water said it would work with the Isle of Wight Council and other organisations to ensure the money was well spent. Paul Kent of Southern Water, who has overseen the programme, said Shanklin had been chosen after an investigation into factors affecting water quality, which saw a team of experts take samples and conduct surveys. The company's investigation found the water quality at Shanklin was affected by several factors, which will now be addressed. Misconnections in wastewater pipes can be traced to source, and householders help to fix them, while DNA tracing showed contamination from dogs and seabirds was another issue. As a result, access of dogs to the beach may be restricted further during bathing water season, and new campaigns launched, urging people to clean up after their pets and warning them against feeding birds. Discussion will be held with landowners to prevent agricultural runoff.
Hair salon targeted by hackers. Hackers stole customer details from a hair salon and attempted to hold the owner to ransom. Ebony Hair Salon in the Palance Road, Northwood, was hit by a cyber attack last week when clients' names, phone numbers and appointment times were stolen, as well as financial data. The news comes after 2 island GP surgeries were targeted by hackers following a national cyber attack. Salon owner Christina Ham has appealed for customers to get in touch and confirm their appointment times, as staff have no way of knowing when people are booked in. Christina contacted an IT repair firm after she had struggled to access her computer. She was told hackers had taken over the computer remotely and deactivated the antivirus software. The hackers stole the information and then emailed her, demanding she provided her debit card details in exchange for the computer data. Christina said, "Life has become very stressful and busy. This is costing us a lot of money. 2 years of work and data has gone. It has made business very difficult for us, but this is a tight-knit community, and people have been helping us get the message out there. We are urging our customers to contact us and let us know about their appointments. The IT guy told me the only way to really back up your data is by using the cloud. So I've learned a massive lesson." Christina's other salon, Ivory Hair and Nail Bar in Yarmouth, has not been affected.
And 2 GP practices are able to take appointments again after recovering from a cyber attack. Medina Healthcare, which has surgeries in Wootton Bridge and Newport, and Esplanade Surgery Ryde, were hit by the computer problem last Friday following a global attack on a number of organisations. The practices were only able to accept emergency appointments until Tuesday, but the normal booking system was restored on Wednesday. St Mary's Hospital was not affected, but staff were told to be vigilant and look out for suspicious emails. An Isle of Wight NHS Trust spokesperson said, "As a precaution, we reminded staff not to follow links."
Fixed link study needs to be done. Independent parliamentary candidate for the island, Julie Jones-Evans, has backed calls for a feasibility study in a fixed link. Julie Jones-Evans said, "I am supporting the study because any decision about a fixed link has to be evidence-based. It is a divisive issue, and I'm not advocating one way or the other as to whether we should have a fixed link, but we just need to debate it in an informed way." Conservative candidate Bob Seeley said, "I am not in favour of a fixed link and would find it difficult to imagine circumstances in which I would be. However, I do not object to a study being undertaken, not least as I suspect it will show that a fixed link is not financially or environmentally feasible without high cost." Labour candidate Julian Critchley said, "If there is no cost to islanders, then I can't see any reason why we shouldn't ask the Department of Transport to fund a study. Like all parties on the island, Labour has members who support and oppose the fixed link. So ultimately any decision on whether to pursue such a project would have to be approved by an island-wide referendum." Green candidate Vix Lothian said, "The issue is not just one of feasibility. It is a highly complex issue where we are concerned about the pros and cons of the link for our roads, hospitals, schools, housing environment and jobs for the islanders. Any impact study I would support would have to be academic and neutral in its outlook. To provide a truly comprehensive account of all solutions to solving our cross-Solent transport crisis." Liberal Democrat candidate Nicholas Belfit said, "I do support a feasibility study, but I believe we need to change the island's legislation to match that of the Scottish Isles under the Islands Bill. We believe we would not have access to any funding from the estate until the legislation is updated. UKIP candidates Darrell Pitcher said, "I have no issue with a fixed link feasibility study, but I do feel that no public money should be spent on it." The link would be a private project, built for profit, and as such the company or consortium interested in bringing forward the proposal should pay for the feasibility study.
Save our red squirrels. A campaign has been launched to cut the death toll of red squirrels on island roads. Eye-catching squirrel signs have been produced to slow down traffic in black spot areas across the island, and organisers say help is needed from the public to get them on display. The signs are not permitted on the public highway, but can be put up in prominent positions on private property where motorists can see them. This is where the squirrels need your help. You can get one of these attractive signs free, but you'll need to find a suitable pole or fence post and attach it. The signs measure about 600mm by 400mm and are printed on lightweight board. The campaign to get motorists to watch their speed is jointly funded by the Wight Squirrel Project, which gathers data to determine where the sign should go, and the Isle of Wight Red Squirrel Trust, which focuses on educating people about red squirrels and their habitat. It is said the signs in the worst black spot areas where squirrels get killed are Wilmingham Lane in Freshwater, Hallett's Shoot Yarmouth, Leeson Road Bonchurch, Station Road Wootton and Victoria Avenue Shanklin. The idea was the brainchild of Peter Foister of Woodside, who was becoming frustrated with the amount of unnecessary squirrel deaths on his road.
Council to discuss jobs creation company. Plans which could see up to 600 new jobs created on the island were due to be discussed by the Isle of Wight Council's ruling executive last night, Thursday. The discussions held behind closed doors due to commercial confidentiality were revealed in the county press last week and involved a major UK-based customer service provider setting up a shop on the island. The company would be ready to operate from September with support from the Isle of Wight Council's Regenerations programme. The huge jobs boost is dependent on the executive agreeing to spend around £2.1 million of its capital budget to release and invest an office building. The company, which remains anonymous while negotiations take place, is expected to invest £35 million over the next 5 years and provide a minimum of 400 jobs, rising to 600 in time.
Knighton's historic White Lion pub, closed for more than a year, is set to reopen shortly and looks set to retain its name. In February, the county press reported island publican Matt Parker planned to reopen it as a gastropub and to change its name to the Knighton Arms. However, Mr Parker told the county press this week it failed to reach a deal with the pub's owners, EI Group, formerly known as Enterprise Inns. He said they didn't share my vision. In statement, EI Publican Partnership said, "We're currently in discussion with a publican who has a long-term interest in the White Lion, Knighton. As discussions continue, we're pleased to say the same publican has taken on the pub on a short-term agreement, and we'd like to reassure the community the pub will reopen very shortly."
Driver chased by armed police. Armed police gave chase to a man around the West Wight countryside after he evaded a speed check. Island magistrates heard Lee Ritchie ignored a police officer's calls to halt at the 40 mile per hour speed check on Forest Road, Newport on April the 26th. The police armed response team, who recorded a speed of 57 miles per hour, gave chase after Ritchie swerved around an officer attempting to flag him down. Richie then turned sharply at high speed into Gunville Road, and Vivian Ducey pursued said Vivian Ducey prosecuting. Anticipating Richie would return home, police waited for him at his address and followed him in the Willow area, where he gave up the chase. The driver was clearly aware that he was being followed, said Mr. Ducey. The police were on high alert at the time, which is why an armed response unit was on the island. Richie was unrepresentative in court, told magistrate. That exactly how it happened. I knew I was speeding, and I knew I'd be in trouble for what I did. It was a very silly spur-of-the-moment thing. I thought I could get home without being caught. Richie of Cooper's Lane, Shalfleet, who admitted speeding and 2 charges of failing to stop when directed to do so, was spared an automatic driving ban, but had his licence endorsed with 4 penalty points, plus a £480 fine, £85 costs, and a £30 surcharge.
A leading Cowes councillor is calling on post office bosses to think again about the new location of the town's branch. Councillor John Nicholson has accused post office managers of being completely disingenuous after they dismissed a proposal to site a new branch in the High Street and of failing to address the needs and wishes of people and businesses. The saga began when Marks & Spencer's took over the former Co-op store in Terminus Road and the post office branch inside was closed. A temporary building was sited at Cowes Yacht Haven, but that has now shut, with services being moved to a new post office in Mill Hill Road Co-op, which opens today, Friday. Campaigners say the new site is too far out of town for elderly residents and businesses and is not on a regular bus route, forcing people to climb a steep hill to get to the new branch. In the latest twist to the saga, it has emerged Central Convenience Stores is due to open a franchise in the High Street, and the owner, Dave Parkman, said he would be willing to have a new post office there. However, post office bosses said the proposed new branch would be too close to the branch in Mill Hill Road. A post office spokeswoman said, "We are not seeking a new applicant to operate a post office in Cowes. However, we will be keeping the situation under review." Aquamarine Gifts and Cards, where the new central shop will be, is relocating to another town centre site. And now it's goodbye from Pauline.
And goodbye from Ken. Bye.
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind is delighted to offer a pair of Isle of Wight Festival weekend camping tickets worth £195 each. For your chance to win, all you have to do is complete the entry form on the website or send your name, address and contact details with your £5 entry fee to Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, Millbrook House, 137 Carisbrooke Road, Newport, Isle of Wight, PO 30 1DD. You can enter the competition as many times as you like, but each entry will cost £5. Entries must be received before 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 6th of June. The draw will take place on the morning of Wednesday the 7th of June. The winner will be notified on that day. Good luck.
And now we're going to read the second part of the County Press, and this is Imelda
and Sunara, and we're going straight into the letters page. And this one is headed, Honour Our Brave Polish Allies. This year is the 75th anniversary of the defence of Cowes by Captain Frankie and the ORP Błyskawica when they came to the defence of Cowes, East Cowes and the Isle of Wight at the time of their greatest need. There was tragic loss of life that night of the Blitz, which had a devastating effect on the towns, but was much reduced by the bravery of our Polish allies. To commemorate this action, the name of the new floating bridge should be Captain Frankie. I hope this suggested name will be supported by residents of the Isle of Wight, as I think this is a very opportune time not to forget this brave action by the Polish armed forces who fought during the Second World War for our freedom and yours. And this is from Martin Bilson of Gurnard.
And my letter concerns Ryde School, written by Harry Pritchard of Newport. Residents living in properties surrounding Ryde School are very much opposed to the granting of planning permission for the building of what is in fact a 54-bedroomed hotel on the playing fields of Ryde School. A Ryde Town Council meeting to consider this to be held tonight, Friday, at 7 p.m, will take place at the George Street Centre, the Old Methodist Church, the entrance of which is located in the car park of the Co-op. This is to accommodate the large number of residents who are expected to attend the discussion of the matter.
More public toilets needed, written by J. Gibbons of Ryde. Congratulations to the sterling souls who cleaned up the appallingly befouled bench in Brading, mentioned in the County Press, 12th of May. One reason for this episode may be deliberate vandalism of a revolting nature. Another might be that someone, having been taken ill, having looked for a public toilet and not found one, was literally unable to contain himself. I can remember, and many of you will also remember, a time when there were fewer people and more countryside, smaller and fewer towns, with closer areas of wooded space, roads with verges and hedges, places where one could relieve oneself out of sight. If we are to have larger and ever-growing populations, due to our living longer, and that other reason politicians don't like us to mention, and if we are to provide the housing, schools, roads and motorways they need, if we are to concrete over more of our islands, large and small, we must reconcile ourselves to providing more, not fewer, public toilets.
My husband looked after with love and care. This is from Lillian Owens and family of Ventnor. On behalf of my family, I would like to say a big thank you to the ambulance service, the doctors, nurses and staff at the intensive care unit at St Mary's Hospital. On April the 9th, my husband Steve had a cardiac arrest. Luckily, our friends were able to perform CPR until an ambulance arrived. They managed to stabilise him and he was rushed into St Mary's and admitted to the intensive care unit. He was there for 2 days and was taken care of by the most amazing doctors, nurses and staff. They were caring, compassionate, professional and even made time to make sure we were looked after. Sadly, Steve passed away on April the 11th, peacefully and with all his family with him. For this we will be forever grateful and would like to say thank you to all who helped and for the love and care that was shown to Steve.
This letter is from B. Draper, past chairman, Isle of Wight Branch Royal Artillery Association of the Royal British Legion in Newport, headed Gun Description Wrong. In a story about an exhibition at Bembridge Heritage Centre about the village at war in County Press weekend of the 12th of May, the picture caption says, "Gunners run to man the anti-aircraft gun stationed at Culver." It is, in fact, a 9.2 coastal gun, which would be incapable of being elevated high enough for anti-aircraft use and is totally different in appearance. There were 2 of them at Culver and were only used against enemy shipping.
Live up to illustrious ancestors, and this is from Molly Attrill of Knighton, and it's a question for Bob Seeley. Bearing the name of the illustrious family who pioneered the island's first public library service, how does he feel about conservative austerity policies that resulted in the closure of libraries across the country? And what is his own provision now on the provision and funding of welfare and other public services vital to maintaining a civilised, cohesive and stable society?
Reflect on why there is a crisis. This from William Hans Bromwich of Cowes. Chris Smith's letter from the County Press, the 5/12, I think he means the 12th of May, speaks volumes. An interesting and very revealing contrast in style to the recent CQC reports. Dr. Mark Pugh, as Acting Chief Executive Officer, had the good grace to recognise the failings of senior management and apologised unreservedly to staff, patients and the Isle of Wight community. Chris Smith, by contrast, chooses a more arrogant stance, finding fault with the County Press reporting of one issue amid a catalogue of failure within the Isle of Wight ambulance service, highlighted by the CQC, which classified the service as inadequate. CQC spokesperson Ted Baker, on the day that St Mary's Hospital was placed in special measures, chose to speak exclusively about one issue of concern, bullying. He said, "It's far too prevalent in the NHS, bullying of staff. The NHS is short of really good staff. We're often hearing that. What we often don't hear is how difficult some of the staff find it to work in some of their clinical areas, and this was particularly true of the Isle of Wight. Unless they treat their staff well, how can they expect to recruit sufficient staff to provide really good care?" Mr. Smith might like to reflect upon why the Isle of Wight ambulance service is facing such a serious recruitment and retention crisis. It couldn't be clearer that the Isle of Wight ambulance service needs new leadership at the very top, someone with the appropriate people skills to ensure a safe, sustainable and credible future for the service going forward. As an islander, yes, I have cause for concern. I am concerned Chris Smith might still be in his post this time next week.
And this is from Dr. Ian R. McLennan, a GP and consultant in public health who's retired and lives in Alveston. Among the 4 declared parliamentary candidates who outlined their position on the National Health Service, the Conservative Bob Seely stood out as the only one who would not make a firm commitment to a comprehensive, local, publicly funded, publicly provided National Health Service, free at the point of need on the Isle of Wight. Free at the point of delivery, as stated by Councillor Seely, is not the same thing. A total hip replacement delivered to a fully insured island patient at a future Conservative government's National Health Service branded private healthcare provider in Portsmouth or Southampton may not involve the patient having to pay. But crucially, and in contrast to the present National Health Service that Councillor Seely's party has all brought to its knees, the service would not be delivered where it's needed, that is, near to where the person, frail, elderly patient actually lives. What use is free at the point of delivery if, as happens in the USA, you're out of work or have a long-term condition or adverse lifestyle factors, and the National Health Service Tory style doesn't deliver to people like you? Contrary to Mr. Seely's assertion, how the health service is delivered is right at the front line of the ideological battle in which the Conservatives must be defeated if we value a universal, high-quality health service that puts people before profit. Our National Health Service is the envy of the world. Only a publicly funded, publicly provided NHS entitles this country to put the word civilised before the word world in this context and claim to be a member of it. I challenge each of our parliamentary candidates to publicly guarantee that if he or she is returned as an MP, he or she will always vote to maintain comprehensive NHS services physically located on the Isle of Wight, at least to the scale and quantity we currently enjoy, even if that means going against the party's whip. This should present no difficulty for Julian Critchley, as the Labour Party published manifesto pledge is explicitly in line with this. I would also like to challenge would-be Tory voters to explain what, if anything, there is in Labour's policy for the National Health Service they don't agree with, and how further National Health Service privatisation will work in the best interests of Highlanders.
This next letter is from Peter Bishop of Bembridge. Why don't horse owners clear up? Walking my dog around Bembridge, I'm amazed by the amount of horse poo around the lanes, on the beach, on the road, and even on the pavement. Now, the law clearly states that dog owners are required to clean up after their dogs. But somehow, horses are allowed to foul anywhere they please and nothing gets said. Why is there a law for dogs, but not responsible horse owners? After all, fouling is fouling. Horse owners should be made to clean up after their horses. I wonder how many Bembridge residents find this so annoying. I've spoken to many dog owners who say their dogs eat the horse poo. So, all you horse owners, either clean up after your horse or keep them in the fields where they belong. As for horses being allowed on the road, it should never be allowed. Absolute menace to traffic, an accident waiting to happen.
All down to bad management, says Ernest Lowe of Shanklin. I was present at the demonstration of parents at Sandown Bay Academy. Given the time of the protest, when many parents would be working, it was a sizable turnout, and the strength of feeling was very clear. I'm a retired teacher and have some experience in secondary education, including some years in an Isle of Wight school. With all the uncertainties at the moment, it is obvious teacher morale at Sandown will have taken a nosedive. Older teachers may be thinking about early retirement, while others will be scouring the Times educational supplement for appointments elsewhere. This will have a knock-on effect in the classroom. What is clear is the buck stops with management. In this case, management is AET. I don't know if it's common knowledge, but only last year, following a series of Ofsted reports criticising AET, the DFE itself accepted AET was letting down too many pupils. In any other walk of life, if management is failing, then management must be replaced. I understand the head of governors resigned in protest at AET's management. Is there not a message here about the competence of AET? I don't know the process of contracting school management out of external bodies, but there must be something in the contract that says the government will give you zillions of pounds of taxpayers' money and you will manage schools efficiently and get good results for children in school. The corollary must be something like, if you can't do it, we'll find someone who can. With a government obsessed with running public services like a business and getting value for money, it makes sound business sense to jettison AET at Sandown and getting someone who can do it better. Let's be clear. AET might call itself a charity, but that doesn't mean it doesn't pay large salaries to its staff across the country, many of whom have no idea about the process of teaching and learning. Academies were a creation of the government, theoretically removing control from local education authorities that were largely wasteful, inefficient, and not improving standards, and giving the money to locally unaccountable bodies with a view to improving standards. I doubt there's any evidence of these outside bodies improving standards nationally. Any improvement in education quality will be down to diligent and hard-working teachers and children in the classroom. After all, isn't that where education takes place? Finally, I understand the school roll has fallen from 1,200 to 1,000. 1,000 students is a good number for a secondary school. Different readers may have something to say about transporting all or some students 5 miles on this green island.
Most elegant ankles, from A. Rushton of Newport. Over the years, I have appreciated seeing your pictures of the various Isle of Wight High Sheriffs in their formal regalia, and for me, the man with the most attractive legs and elegant angles has to be Alan Titchmarsh. Just thought you would like to know.
And now we go to looking back. And there's a picture to go with this one. Looking back years ago, cultural and trade links between the island and Russia, which were forced 2 centuries ago, were revived thanks to a South Wight village community. The occasion was marked by unveiling the refurbished Hoy Monument at Chale, which was attended by guest of honour Boris Pankin, ambassador of the then fledgling Russian Federation. The monument was a tribute to Tsar Alexander I, who visited Britain in 1814 and made a home at the Hermitage in Chale.
And another historic one, 100 years ago, on May the 19th, 1917. Following the initial Gallipoli fiasco, an island soldier serving on the Hellas front wrote an account of the battle for his sister living in Newport. Rifleman Toogood wrote, "I had such a terrible experience that I didn't expect to be alive now. So close were they to the enemy, he compared it to a sprint across 9 acres field while under the chaos of gunfire and exploding shells. After being severely wounded, he tried to turn back, but was forced into a foxhole no more than 120 yards from the Turkish line. He waited there for nearly 4 hours before being able to make a break for safety, despite having a hole in his lung."
And 75 years ago, on May the 23rd, 1942, complaints had been made about the sounding of the air raid warning. Sometimes the alert was sounded when it should have been all clear, and in Cowes the siren was often set off a full 5 minutes after it had been heard in Newport.
And 50 years ago, May 20th, 1967, the Black Arrow rocket, which was set to launch a British satellite into orbit from Woomera, left for Paris, where it would be put on public display at the Paris Air Museum. Built on the island by Westland Aircraft, the rocket was loaded onto a military aircraft at Sandown Airport. Black Arrow was developed as a technological satellite launcher with the primary purpose of space testing experimental equipment.
And 25 years ago, on May the 22nd, 1992, a top-level inquiry was underway after 5 prisoners dug their way out of adjoining cells and an outer wall at Parkhurst top security prison in an early hours escape bid. The prisoners, who were serving between 9 and 15 years for offences including armed robbery and violence, were recaptured by officers and dog handlers in the prison grounds. After making a 2-foot diameter hole in the outer wall of their wing, the men lowered themselves to the ground 3 floors below using a makeshift rope. However, their departure was spotted by security cameras and night patrols.
And 10 years ago, on May the 18th, 2007, Gypsy Moth 4 was due to complete her circumvention of the globe by sailing into Plymouth exactly 40 years after Sir Francis Chichester returned from his record-breaking voyage. Sailed by Cowes man Richard Baggett, Gypsy Moth would then return to Cowes, passing Yarmouth and Gurnard, where it was greeted by hundreds of spectators.
And now we go on to Wight Memories. And the one that we're reading today is Accident at School Led to Man's Great Business Idea. Kelly's Directory is a fascinating window to a past world where many jobs required a long apprenticeship, a time when men used their hands to shape wood, leather and metals. That little booklet listed local tradesmen in 1930, including no fewer than 7 blacksmiths in the Newport district. I recall too the long-established wagon and cart makers that were in Pyle Street, namely the Guy brothers, as well as Coombs, the saddlers in Node Hill. Recently, I was privileged to be given a few old postcards of another local firm dating back to around 1910, an enterprise that incorporated innovation with all the crafts. The family were the Withams, whose father came to the island around 1880 from the London area and became the owner of 9 river barges. However, his sons, led by James, the eldest, branched out into engineering. Their family home was at Pyle House, large premises that today are the offices of Chartered Accountants Harris and Black. The brothers had working premises at Borough Hall Garage. It was opposite what today is County Hall, on the site of the Swan Hotel, as well as a shop older residents will recall as later being the Medina Cafe Cake Shop. Further repair premises would have been found at Coppins Bridge, so it can be seen they would not have been a business it was easy to ignore. The postcards I was given clearly show the range and also the quality of their products, that in the beginning were invalid carriages. Many were testimonials sent by satisfied clients from all over England, as far afield as Nottingham and Bishop Auckland. James Witham was the driving force behind this short-lived firm. Following an accident at school, he was confined to a wheelchair for the remainder of his life, but he never let that hold him back. He was an intelligent youth, and he developed a talent for writing articles for magazines before moving on to learn to type, a skill his sister continued to teach for many years after his death. James put his disability to good use, as later he was instrumental in designing self-propelled invalid carriages before moving on to motorcycles and sidecars. His disability made him aware of many of the details that might otherwise have been overlooked by an able-bodied man. He was well supported by his brothers, including Ernest, who, following being called into the army, served in India in the First World War, and sadly James was to die in 1922 at the age of just 45, but in those few short years in business he had left an indelible legacy.
Following James' death, Ernest was employed for over 30 years as a maintenance man for Southern Vectis. At its peak, the business employed around 24 people. It was with a Mr. Dingwall Withams brought out the first Dingwall-Witham invalid carriage, which went on to gain not only a national but a worldwide reputation. It was later James branched out into bicycle and motorcycle manufacture and maintenance. He became well known throughout the island, often to be seen in his invalid chair that he'd fitted to a Douglas motorcycle, operating the machine from the chair with special controls. He was a member of the Isle of Wight Motorcycle Club as well as being an enthusiastic photographer. The account of James's funeral tells us much about the man. He was buried in Fairley Cemetery, and those attending his funeral included many of the town's foremost businessmen, such as fellow engineer Byro Cheverton, whose firm had made carriages for Queen Victoria. Members of the Pittis, Black, Blake and Fred Trim families attended, the latter becoming well known for his fruit and vegetable distribution business. Captain Brannan represented the motorcycle club. Also attending were members of the Trojans Athletic Club, of which James had been a vice president, and, of course, his employees. Into his too short life, this remarkable man crammed more than many who lived to be twice his age. However, the Witham name continued in Newport for a few more years. Although their cycle trade ended shortly after James's death, it was via sister Queenie Witham who taught typing at Pyle House for the next 30 years. This was recalled by a lifelong Newport resident who told me her tutor would cover her typewriter keyboard with an apron, thus ensuring she became able to type by touch. No easy lessons in those days.
And now we move on to my view. And the first one is by Jake Harrison. I'm getting the wrong sort of fever. Help. I think I'm coming down with a bad case of anti-disco fever. There's a new nightclub in town, and I don't want to go. Why is this? Am I becoming a bed by 7 bore? Or is the island nightclub scene bombing faster than the Jägermeisters it might be seen so famous for? Here we go again, another nightclub, another case of so what's new then? Yes, on Tuesday it was announced another new hip nightclub was set to launch on the island. The new club, Fever and Boutiques, is promising to take the Isle of Wight nightclub scene by storm, complete with 2 rooms, 3 bars and a colourful dance floor, which appears to resemble a rather large Rubik's Cube. The club's official website states, oozing class with its blend of sophisticated style and sumptuous velvet furniture combined with lighting and elegant chandeliers. Now, I'm certainly not a cool clubber anymore. In fact, the last time I was in a club, I managed to get myself physically ejected for standing on a chair to wave at a friend. But I know enough island establishments to know the website should at least be honest and tell the truth before the vomit-stained rug is pulled from under their feet. Oozing with as much class as a group of youths in JD sports tracksuits, with a boring blend of donated furniture, Poundland-style lighting that will probably break, and a shifty-looking chandelier that will inevitably fall down, knocking out the resident DJ, sounds more appropriate. Now you'll all probably think that I'm being a killjoy and attacking a bar that hasn't even opened its doors and put ties on its bouncers. Yet, yes, you'll be right to think that. However, I'm 26, and I've seen nightclubs on the island open and close more time than a police car doors on a Friday night in Ryde. I believe there is a glitter ball-sized question that needs to be answered. What has happened to the island night scene? I want to know why it is the steep hill cost of student socialism, the rise of festivals up and down the south coast, the popularity in travelling and holidays, house parties, or has a night out just become absurdly boring and unfashionable? Seriously, where is there to go and have fun these days? Let's face it. In Newport, if you want to get arrested, you know where to go. If you want to get punched for insulting somebody's beloved football team, then your best bet is another popular establishment. And one miserable yet well-frequented place doesn't even have a music licence. And clubs in Portsmouth and Southampton are too expensive and inconvenient for Ireland to enjoy a good night out regularly. You see, the thing is that nightclubs used to be the holy grail of social activity for the younger adult, the rite of passage into a world of eardrum-bleeding beats and sound, neon shapes and illegal smells and substances. A proper night spot was where everybody used to go to unwind, de-stress, meet people and let off all of the steam from a grueling week at work, college or collecting benefits. However, these island establishments today are just an ugly mixture of underage kids fighting sticky floors and more fighting. They're like saloon bars of out of the wild, wild west. Sooner or later, some cowboy will walk in looking for trouble. The disco is in decline, and it's going down the pan faster than the contents of a young man's stomach after a night of shoveling pills, booze, and out-of-date kebabs down the throat. Realistically, how long has this new joint got? I give it 6 to 12 months before the out-of-business sign is hanging loosely above its doors. The Isle of Wight nightclub scene has bombed faster than the Jägermeisters it used to be so famous for. Will we look back and mourn the passing? Or are we now beginning to dance over their graves in a different sound? Give me a good old pub any day. At least the good ones stay put.
And continuing with my view, this from Matt Chatfield. Try taking pleasure in everyday things. The place you first explore independently has a special meaning for everyone, and I'm no different. My first walk to school was down leafy Carter Street in Sandown. Afterwards, through the genteel avenues beyond, lined with bed and breakfast places and tiny hotels, I would often make my way to the beach at Avenue Road Slipway. What luck for me, then, that I can still take that walk 45 years later and enjoy those little things that mean so much when you're young. Later in my childhood, I lived for a while in South Hampshire. Revisiting that area these days, I can hardly recognise it. Even the roads themselves have been rebuilt and reorganised. The woods and fields I played in there are long built over. But when I return to my earlier haunts in South Wight, the comforting familiarity of the mundane strikes me time and time again. The textures of the walls and pavements in Sandown have strong echoes for me. As a schoolboy, I was often told by my mother not to gaze at my feet when walking. Well, I still do, and she's given up telling me now. The advantage of this gait is that you get to see a lot of little things, admittedly these days from a higher vantage point. So have you noticed how many of the older pavements on the island are made from orange shingle? This distinctive colour, doubtless reflecting a local seam of gravel that was being won at that time, is not to be seen in more recent surfacing, although it often shows through on worn patches. And those even older walls, made from soft green stone, you can still find studded with flints from the beach. I used to run my hands along the smooth, knobbly stones as I walked along the Broadway to the shops with my mother. The greengrocer's at Station Avenue is long boarded up, the cinema closed, and the post office remembered only by a pillar box in the garden of what is now an unremarkable house. But I can still look at the curious mottled bark of the same plane trees and try to peel off little sheets of it with my fingers, just as I used to, while Mum was chatting with neighbours and her little boy was standing idly by. And so to the beach. So many hours spent dallying on the foreshore, winter and summer, by the rough, tumbling English Channel waves and the sandy steps and rough concrete groins. It was years before I realised that not all beaches turned your hands and knees orange when you dug in them, all frothed with foamy spume in the storms, all rolled up sand-encrusted balls of soft blue clay in the water for boys to take home and bake in the oven. So if you think too many places on our island are changed and gone, don't forget to take pleasure in the everyday. Sometimes it's the small things that last the longest.
And now we move on to Behind the News. Setting Sail on My New Life has been written by Cowes businesswoman Sophie Neary, who embarks on a middle-aged gap year. On a crisp Monday morning 6 months ago, in a sun-drenched office and in the very briefest of conversations, I was made redundant from the board of fashion brand Jack Wills. It came out of the blue. 1 minute I was on a packed commuter train, running late for an early meeting. The next I was in an empty carriage, homeward bound, dazed and wondering what on earth to do with myself for the rest of the day, let alone the coming weeks and months. The first week was having a minor meltdown, panicking about what on earth to do next, especially as I was on the verge of signing a huge new mortgage to buy a small mews house in Notting Hill. I also really miss my team, and they made a stressful job delightful, and I had not been able to say goodbye. My heart was tinged with sadness. After a little over a week of wallowing in self-pity, drinking tea and fixating over motivational quotes on Instagram, which, let's face it, simply gets rather dull and far too worthy after a while, I decided to take the bull by the horns and use this opportunity to completely change my life. I didn't feel ready to throw myself back into the corporate world and all that it entails. In fact, I felt queasy at the mere thought of it. Sometimes I thought you just have to throw everything up into the stars and see where fate determines you should land.
And lo and behold, the cards slowly started to move in my favour. The headhunters I spoke to didn't have any enticing jobs on their books, and citing Brexit, the buyers pulled out of my house. This transpired to be the perfect turn of events, as being shackled to a huge mortgage would have scuppered any financial freedom I had. So, instead of selling my house, I rented it out and reassigned my savings into my new adventure fund. Then came the next big question. If I wasn't going to get another big job, what should I actually do? I had worked pretty much non-stop for the past 23 years, and I liked working. I was good at it. I'd always had jobs I enjoyed, and I liked earning a lot of money and spending it. Rightly or wrongly, my job was an important part of who I was as a person. It defined me. So if I didn't have a job, who would I be? What would I stand for? A personal trainer used to wind me up by telling me many times over, great things never come from inside your comfort zone. I never found that helpful when I was puce with exertion, my thighs screaming, doing only 10 more reps.
With this in mind, I chose to see my redundancy as the expiration date of my old life and the turning point to set my sails on a different course for the future. I made myself a promise. I would live a life worth living according to what was important to me, as opposed to merely making a living. It only took 15 trips to the tip, 10 trips and countless boxes to the charity shop to declutter 16 years of stuff from my home. But hey, I had time on my hands to do it. At one point, every dress in the charity shop window was one of mine, which filled me with a mix of pride, satisfaction, and a tinge of regret, Damn it, I wish I'd kept those shoes. I had a digital declutter too, and unsubscribed from a plethora of marketing emails. Bye-bye guilty pleasures. Hello budget. I have had one self-indulgent splurge on a renovated 1969 Series 11A Land Rover, or 2A, called the Beast, due to the fact he's so heavy to park. Toned arms, it transpires, are a perk of a 2.5-ton Landy with no power steering. I did a half-day mechanic course. I know where he needs water, oil, and can locate the manual diesel pump and battery. And I purchased curious-sounding things like a bottle jack, not that I intend to use any of my newfound knowledge. Much to the relief of my course teacher, I have paid for the comprehensive European breakdown cover. The Beast, proudly supporting a black and silver GB sticker on his bottom, feels safe. He can't go any more than 60 miles an hour, and it's easy to drive once underway, which is handy if you'll be driving on the wrong side of the road for most of the year. So where to go and what to do? First stop, Tarifa, Spain, via ferry Santana, Salamanca and Seville.
Why Tarifa? Well, I have friends there, and I'm not yet quite brave enough to go somewhere where I don't know anyone. Plus, it's simply lovely. For the keen cartographers, Tarifa can be found at precisely 36 degrees of latitude. It's a beautiful old Moorish walled town and is the southernmost point of continental Europe, where the Mediterranean collides with the Atlantic and looks across the Straits of Gibraltar to Africa. It gets very, very windy and is the kite surfing mecca of Europe. Conquering kite surfing is what I'm going to do. There is a stunning 5-mile sandy beach for walking my dog Tiggy. The restaurants are very dog-friendly, and a decent glass of Rioja costs a mere €2. We will be summering in the Alps, and then I'm going trekking in Nepal for 2 months. By the time winter comes, Tiggy and I will be back in the Alps to conquer the art of ski touring with a small dog. Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing time and time again and expecting a different result. Who am I to argue with such genius? Making a big life change and walking away from the corporate world, particularly the salary, is a bit scary. But you know what's even scarier? Regret. And what will I say now when people ask me what I do? Well, I've had 6 months of gardening leave to practice. I'm on eternity leave, I shall reply, which is completely and utterly impossible to say without an enormous smile.
And now we move on to what's on. And first of all, the Shanklin Theatre. And on the 27th, 28th, 29th, Monday, Tuesday the 30th, at 7:30, You're Only Young Twice. The Pepper Pot Players is staging the comedy You're Only Young Twice by Ron Aldridge. The Players will be at Shanklin Theatre next Saturday, May the 27th, to Tuesday, May the 30th at 7:30 p.m. Every parent endures a difficult stage when the children stay out too late, sleep all day, and play music too loud. Sue and Richard have all these problems, but Sue's dad is the cause. The play shows you're as young as you feel, and after a stag night, Dad suddenly starts feeling his age. Wednesday the 31st, Count Arthur Strong begins at 8 o'clock. And then there are June the 1st, Best of the West End and Beyond, 8:15. Friday the 2nd, Buddy Holly Winter Dance Party, at 7:30. Best of the West End and Beyond at Thursday the 8th, 8:15, and at Thursday the 15th at 8:15. IDTC Present Oscar Night on Friday the 16th at 7, and at Saturday the 17th at 7. Whitney Queen of the Night, Sunday the 18th, 7:30. Best of the West End and Beyond, Thursday the 22nd, 8:15. The ELO Enterprise, Friday the 23rd, 7:30. Best of the West End and Beyond on Thursday the 29th of June, that is, of course, 8:15. And finally, ABBA Reunion on Friday the 30th of June at 7:30.
Lucid are back on the lawn. Bank Holiday Monday is fast approaching, which can only mean one thing: it's time for Lucid on the lawn. The popular island band will once again stage a free open-air concert at Rillstone Gardens, Shanklin, on Bank Holiday Monday, May the 29th, from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. The annual event has grown over the past few years to attract a huge crowd of music lovers. So pack a picnic and drinks and take your friends and family and enjoy an afternoon of music in the beautiful gardens. Lucid will play a similar free concert at the Gardens on the August Bank Holiday Monday. And John Doyle at Key Arts, Wednesday 24th of May, 7:30 p.m. Tickets are £12. Doyle on guitar has risen to a level occupied by him alone. No one in Irish traditional music is a better guitarist than him right now. And that's a quote from the Wall Street Journal. Rock and rollers visit. 60s rock and roll band the Toledos will be making the journey across the Solent to perform their first island gigs. They will be playing in the evening at the Castle in Newport on Friday, June the 2nd. On Saturday, June the 3rd, they will visit Ventnor Arts Club from noon to 3 p.m. and in the evening at Conservative Club, Newport. On Sunday, June 4th, they will be playing the King Lud at Ryde from noon to 3 p.m. and then the Old Village Inn at Bembridge in the evening. And one leisure arts music comedy at Medina Theatre. Blake with songs from stage and screen on Friday 26th of May at 7:30 p.m. Tickets £20. Mercury, the official UK #1 tribute to Queen, on Friday the 2nd of June at 7:30 p.m. Tickets £17. Seniors and juniors at £16. Fleetwood BAC, not Fleetwood Mac, Fleetwood Back. Saturday 3rd of June at 7:30 p.m. Tickets £17. We're still with Medina Theatre. Leisure opportunity.
Not quite all, Sonara, because I missed this one. Top Isle of Wight bands at the Ludfest. The King Lud will be hosting its 5th Ludfest over the bank holiday weekend. The popular all-day event at the Ryde Esplanade pub will be held on Sunday, May the 28th, showcasing a host of island bands including Mad and Me, Sabotage, Cone and Surfaces to Air. And proceeds from the event will go to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance. And with that, it's goodbye from Imelda and have a good weekend.
And goodbye from Sonara.
This is a download from the BBC. For more information and our terms of use, go to www.bbc.co.uk/in touch. Good evening. Tonight, Britain has triumphed in the fastest growing sport for visually impaired people at the first ever World Championships. Find out what it is and why we're so good at it later on. But first, to mark the bicentenary of Louis Braille's birth 7 years ago, I visited the house just outside Paris where he grew up and where, at the age of 3, he had the accident which led to the blinding of one small boy, but also to the invention of a tactile reading system which has lasted almost unaltered for close on 200 years. Braille liberated thousands of blind people, including me. It's a story which most people only dimly know, but it's now made it to the London stage as the subject for a musical, a bold choice which has received decidedly mixed reviews. So has the team responsible pulled it off? Well, I've been talking to the writer of The Braille Legacy, Sébastien Lancrenon, and to Ellie Southwood, who's been to see it and happens to be a vice chair of the RNIB, which has lent its support to the project. Let's get a taste first of what Ellie heard.
Liberté, égalité, fraternité, you have a duty to do and vote this through. It lies with you, you know that this must be.
Ellie, let me start with you. You went to see the play. What were your expectations and what was the reality for you?
I was a little bit unsure about what to expect. I think I've never quite got over all the various portrayals of blindness and blind people that I've encountered in my life, which have left me, I think, with some trepidation in terms of some of them have been somewhat cringy, embarrassing. And so had my friend not had a spare ticket at the last minute, perhaps I wouldn't have gone. But
okay. And the reality?
The reality is I'm delighted I went. We had a fabulous evening and I thoroughly enjoyed the show. One of the things was the balance of the character of Louis. So one thing that I really notice about how blind people are portrayed is often it's one of extremes, either pathetic sort of victim character or somehow some sort of superhuman that none of us really ever could live up to.
And in this case?
And in this case, it was a perfect balance. A young man being portrayed who was frustrated at his situation, who was desperate to get out into the world and to do something, but also somebody who was able to build friendships, build relationships, and was a real personality.
Let me bring in Sébastien Lancrenon. First of all, why a musical?
I knew I was going to write one day about Louis Braille, and because of my strong passion for musical theatre, I decided to write my first musical about Louis Braille, and I'm fascinated by his determination, his courage, and his generosity. Louis was just an ordinary boy, and he wanted to have the same chance and the same rights. And that's why he has been fighting.
I agree with that. And one of the things that I think really struck me was actually realising that Braille wasn't adopted outside France or even inside France until after he died. And I know that, a couple of us who were at the show were quite shocked by that. And I suppose it brings it home, actually, how relatively recent this thing is that certainly enabled me and people like me to read like everybody else.
There have been criticisms and indeed writing about disability seems almost inevitably to bring down criticisms on people's head. It's a very risky thing to do. One thing that's been suggested, it's quite stylised visually. The blind children are dressed in white, the sighted people are in black, the children are blindfolded at times and not at others. What were you looking to convey by that?
The objective of the Braille Legacy production at the Charing Cross Theatre are, first, to meet for the first time with a real audience and to see if the English public is interested in the Louis Braille story or not. Because when you create a show, you never know. And the second objective is definitely to attract the attentions of big theatres, programmers, etc. And yes, we have been using blindfolds because when the blind children are wearing the blindfolds, it means that they are looked as blind people by the society. And when they take off the blindfold, it's because they are entirely themselves. And when they are happy, when they are free, when they decide, and when they are not seen as monsters, when they decide themselves of their lives, they take off the blindfold.
Why not use blind children on the stage in the production?
I wanted to have some blind actors. We selected one blind singer who is a professional singer who has been working in the West End. Unfortunately, she had to cancel a few days before we started rehearsals because she was ill. As well, we work in a very strong and hard industry. It's very professional, and I only work with professional people, whoever they are. And
so you're saying you don't want to patronise, you want people to be in if they're good enough, basically. That's the point you're making.
This is the message of We Braille.
Another thing that was raised was that there are only 2 audio-described performances, still to come in the run, I should say. Why was that?
So first, I'm very proud to personally finance, with my money, 2 audio-described performances. In an off-West End theatre, you never have audio-described performances. It was obvious for me to organise it.
I was just thinking when you were talking about the use of blindfolds on stage and also, of course, the dress, those are 2 things of which I was completely unaware until our discussion after the show, which in itself perhaps is interesting in that it didn't in any way change my appreciation of the show.
But I guess you'd think you'd had the right to know.
Yes. I'm glad that a friend told me at the interval. That was helpful.
Sebastian, there's a subplot in The Legacy of blind children being taken to be experimented on medically. True or false? It was news to me.
I'm very sad to tell you that it was true. Basically, the Braille Legacy is inspired by the life of Louis Braille. Those experiments happened not under the reign of Dr. Pinier, who was such a nice headmaster. He was Louis' mentor, but it happened before his reign. But it was true.
Ellie, I think you said you saw some parallels with the musical and now. What in particular?
I guess I was quite surprised at how relevant I found a couple of the issues in particular. Obviously, I'm quite nervous talking about this in front of Sebastian. So one of the key themes that I interpreted from the show was this balance between the fundamental right that everybody has to education and also, alongside that, a need to have practical skills that mean that you can actually get a job or, contribute or earn money in some way. That discussion continues. And whilst arguably, access to education, especially in the UK, is made a lot easier, although still not as it should be. Certainly, issues around how to get practical employment experience and to what extent that is equally important remains.
Right, so the argument is, should actually there be more emphasis on the jobs that blind people can actually do than maybe just on giving a formal education that replicates what sighted kids would get?
Yes, I think so. And also the extent to which it's perhaps easier in this day and age to go to university and to do a degree than it is to go to a further education college and do a vocational qualification, which might actually be what, if you didn't have sight loss, you would choose to do. The other parallel that really struck me was about access to information. So Louis Braille lived in a time when access to printed books was not possible if you couldn't see. And that situation has improved, and that's mostly and largely because of Louis' invention of Braille. But increasingly, certainly I'm finding it harder and harder to access some online content. There was a time when I think we got to a point where lots of websites were accessible in some way and at some level. I would say now that I can't book flights online at all. And that what is happening instead is that more and more graphics are being used. Even a web page that looks like text when you open it up actually might be a picture. And screen reading software as it stands at the moment isn't able to interpret that. It made me really think about what's the next challenge in terms of access to information.
Ellie Southwood, the Braille Legacy is on at the Charing Cross Theatre until the 24th of June. Now, who knew that one of the fastest growing sports amongst visually impaired people in the UK is tennis? Well, it's true, and from very small beginnings, last week saw the game's first ever World Championships, amid hopes of its being recognised as a Paralympic sport. The competition took place on Spain's Costa Blanca. Rafael Estefania was there.
It's symbol. Service. I have the last string, and then let's start. Give you your handshake.
Handshake.
Yes, Alex.
Oh no.
No.
Alex.
Okay. I would beg you to be absolutely quiet, but now we can start with a big applause for the players.
It's a tie-break in the blind tennis men's final, and in spite of the crowds in the indoor sports center, the silence when the game is on is deafening. Both players need complete silence to hear the bounce of the adapted tennis ball with the noise-making device inside. They are allowed 3 bounces. The first is used to locate the ball, the second to run towards it, and the third to hit it.
My name is Amanda Green. I'm the Vice President of the International Blind Tennis Association. I'm also a player and the UK representative. In the UK, we started in 2007. We started with a demonstration from the Japanese. They came over to demonstrate in London. We grew from 4-5 people all the way up to nearly 600 in the UK, playing weekly and monthly. And across the world, we started with just Japan, then the United Kingdom, and now we have 32 countries interested, 12 of which were here. This tournament is a really big milestone for us. It is the very first international. It's the very first time that the players from around the world have actually seen the standard of play from the other countries. They've seen the quality of coaching, and they've seen just what can be achieved. In terms of PR around the world, it's raised huge awareness.
Okay, Wendy, so today you've got a great match ahead of you. Okay, what we want you to do is to make sure that you settle down into the match. Get rid of those. Hi, I'm Louise Osyoon. I'm the GBVI tennis coach. When you're working with the VI players, it's very player-centred, so you need to understand your player, find out what their strengths are, any weaknesses they may have, like you would do with any player. Overall, the biggest skill for me when I work with the coaches, with the Tennis Foundation, it's about tracking the ball and really listening to the ball and understanding if you're a player that needs 3 bounces, that you need to really track back to give yourself the time to then go forward to meet the ball.
Okay, so best of 3 short sets, so up to 4. If it's 4-4, then a tie break to 7.
I am Brenda Castle and I'm a category B2 and I'm the runner-up. I lost to a Japanese. She was a tough cookie. I lost 4-2, 4-2 to her.
Which categories are there in blind tennis?
There's 3 categories in the international sense of it. So there's B1, B2 and B3. A B1 person has little or no sight. A B2 person has more sight than a B1, and a B3 have more than a B2. So basically, a B1 has the least sight. A B1 are required to wear blindfold, so that the ones who have sight, some persons could see light, some person could see movement and motions. So it is deemed fair. The court is smaller than the normal court. It's the same width, but the length is halfway between the service and the perimeter of the normal court.
You have a way of adjusting your position. How you orientate yourself when you're in the court?
The service lines are tactile, so they can actually feel where they are. Where they serve from is also raised further, so that they know when they get there. They use their racket and they will know when they get there and know that they're in the right place.
Rafael Estefania reporting. And GB maintained its reputation as a pioneer of blind and partially sighted sport by producing the first ever men's world tennis champion in the B3 category. He's Chris Bailey, and now back in the UK, he's been telling me about the significance of this tournament.
Well, the importance of this tournament is the fact that it was the very first international blind tennis tournament, and so none of us players had ever played anyone from outside of our own countries before. So it was a real opportunity to sort of start that ball rolling, really.
And for the first time you've got rankings. What does that mean, really?
Well, it means that the positions that we finished in will get points associated for that, and we'll actually have, I'll say, world rankings in blind tennis now for the different categories. So from my perspective, as I won my section, I'll be world number one.
And presumably part of the problem with a growing sport like this is that you didn't know who you were playing or how good they were, or indeed very much about them.
I knew nothing of my competition when I flew out to Spain, absolutely nothing. It was a case of a bit of sort of scouting while I was there, having a look around at other players and trying to work out who might be in my category and who might be a decent player, and trying to see what I thought of their game and how I might best play against them.
Although you're becoming quite well known in this country, it was by no means a foregone conclusion that you would be champion.
Absolutely not at all, no. I had to play some really tough matches to win it, and I needed other help as well along the way, especially the lady who came out as a coach for the team, Louise. She helped greatly with all the scouting and coaching and tactics for the match as well.
It doesn't seem very long ago that we were featuring this on the programme as a very embryonic sport, only just starting. Why do you think it's grown so fast?
I think it's mainly because there's people in different groups around the country who are really driving the sport forward, really keen and putting the word out there, having regular training sessions, even if it's just every week or two, and making sure that people are aware of the sport and that there's the ability for visually impaired people to actually get out there and have a go at tennis. It doesn't have to necessarily be international tennis or especially competitive. That's there if people want it. If people just want to come along and have a hit, that's there available for them as well.
And what does it mean to you to be not just world champion, obviously, but the very fact of playing again in a really competitive sense?
Oh, it's fantastic for me. I've enjoyed competitive sport throughout my life, and I've been struggling. I was still trying to play the regular game of tennis, but I'm losing way more than I used to. That side of things is very tough, and so to be able to have more of an equal footing based on the eyesight, and then just go out there and let the tennis do the talking, that's brilliant for me.
Now, there's an ambition to make this into a Paralympic sport. What difference do you think this latest tournament will have on that?
It's a big step. I don't know all the exact criteria for a sport becoming a Paralympic sport, but I'm sure that international participation, having international tournaments and world championship type tournaments will be on the checklist of things that the sport needs to achieve. So to have the first one, to get that under our belts, there's lots of things to learn from the tournament, but everyone's so keen to do these sorts of things in the future. Talking to the other countries, everyone was saying, oh, we should do this again, even if it's not a world championships, whenever how many years that takes to do another one. Let's do some friendly tournaments, let's do some tennis camps. So everyone was very keen to have more international games.
So you realise you're going to be hailed as the kind of Andrew Murray of VI tennis, don't you?
Well, that's a nice moniker to have. I'll take it.
Many congratulations to Chris Bailey and indeed the other 5 GB tennis players who competed in Spain. And that's it for today. If you want to know more or give us your views, you can call our action line on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk or go to our website where you can download tonight's programme and subscribe to our podcast. From me, Peter Wight, producer, Lee Kumatat and the team. Goodbye.